Okay, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for the afternoon session, which will start with an interview of Philippe Donnet, the Group CEO of Assicurazioni Generali, who will join us from the Generali Palace on the San Marco place in Venice. And we will talk from the palace here in Prague. So it'll be a conversation between two palaces. I will take a seat and I hope that Philippe will join. Yes, there he is. Hello, Philippe.
Hello everyone. Hello
Hello.
from Venice.
Hello, how is the weather in Venice?
The weather is great and we are enjoying this weather in Venice together with all the colleagues of the Geneva Association.
Excellent, excellent. I can tell you in Prague, the sun is shining too, which means that there is good messages for the insurance industry. And we talked this morning about many different protection gaps. And as you know very well, those exist today. But my first question to you is, if we look at the macroeconomic situation today, is that not potentially creating new protection gaps? And do you believe that we might see segments of population and businesses running the risk of being underserved? What do you think, Philippe?
Unfortunately, I think that this is going to be the case for some reason. The first reason being that this new geopolitical order which is coming will create pressure on our industry, and this pressure on the industry will make the access to protection more difficult, and I will explain why. And then, unfortunately, because of this more difficult access, it will be more difficult to purchase protection. And then, because people purchase protection if they are willing to do it and if they can afford it. And some people will no longer be willing to do it if we don't change the way we deal with our customers. And for some other people, it will become very difficult to afford it. Why is that? Because obviously, because of some supply chain disruptions, because of inflation on the labor costs, inflation on all the costs, compensation costs, non-compensation costs, because of the withdrawal of the COVID-19 stimulus, we are going to face increasing cost of claims as well. So the cost of the protection, especially on the property casualty risk, will be much higher. And because of the increasing of interest rates, we may also face some mismatch on asset liabilities on the life insurance side, which means that at the end, to address those macroeconomic issues, we will have, on one hand, to increase prices on the property casualty and to be much more selective in our underwriting. This is the reason why the access to protection is going to become more difficult. On top of this, as I said, the trust in the financial industry is decreasing. It seems to be all-time low. Only 54% of people trust the financial industry, which is 10 percentage points less than any other industry. So if people don't trust enough, they will not be willing to purchase protection, to purchase additional protection from us. On top of this, there is also a problem with the ability to afford this protection, and in some region, we know that this is very challenging. So at the end, if we want to measure the protection gap, it was around 1.4 billion euros in the beginning of 2000, and we expect, not what, sorry, 1.4 billion, 1.4 trillion, and we expect this protection gap to grow until 1.86 trillion by the end of 2025, half of it being in the Asia-Pacific region.
Well, that sounds pretty scary, but if we look at all these protection gaps, and you've mentioned some of the newly ones because of the economic situation, can you give us some examples on how Generali, as one of the major players in the market, is addressing those? Maybe some good examples that could also be helpful for other colleagues here at the conference.
Well, I will try to. Obviously, the main protection gaps I observed in the market are definitely in the areas of natural catastrophes, cyber risk, pension risk, and obviously healthcare. And the pandemic crisis highlighted an area where more efforts are needed to provide sufficient coverage in case of a future pandemic crisis that could definitely happen. And since the beginning of this COVID-19 pandemic, generally, we've been very vocal about the need to establish a public-private partnership to build solutions to cover the huge business interruption losses that many SMEs had suffered due to the lockdown measures that were implemented by all governments all across the world. And we proposed to focus on a multi-layered structure to be able to provide those solutions, those global solutions. The first layer would include, obviously, primary insurance. The second layer would, as usual, be the reinsurance one. The third layer could be provided by investors through bonds, like cat bonds, but dedicated, I would say, pandemic bonds, which would be a good diversification, risk diversification for those investors. The fourth layer could be provided by the nation healthcare systems, and then there could be a fifth layer in Europe coming from the European Union, and for this matter, maybe UK and Switzerland could join European Union to be able to provide a global cover to all geographically Europe countries to cope with the next pandemic. We are quite happy because this is still an ongoing work, and we have a very good dialogue with all our peers and with national and European institutions. So we are quite confident that at some point we will be able to achieve this kind of solution. This is an example of what can be achieved to close some protection gap.
That is certainly a very, very important initiative. And you say that talks are still going on. How likely do you think that one could reach such a solution?
Unfortunately, in the private sector, we always think that things are not fast enough. But it's obvious that this is quite complex, that the decision-making process is complex in the countries. It's obviously also complex at European level. So we will try, and this is also the interest of public-private partnership. We will try to accelerate the usual time of public decision. I think it's needed because unfortunately the COVID-19 pandemic is not over yet, and we are already talking about new virus coming, and I think that we should be ready for the next one.
Well, I do really hope, but we are now entering the summer, and we all expect, as we heard this morning, that in the autumn we might have another attack from one of these strange animals that cause these pandemics. So I really hope that you can make progress. But let's move on to another question. It's been said that sometimes the insurance industry is not sufficiently addressing these major risks that people face. And we've talked about those: natural catastrophes, aging society, healthcare, long-term healthcare, pandemics, and so on. Do you have the feeling that there is enough eagerness in the insurance industry to address these real issues? Or do you believe that there's still a tendency to stick to the old products that we know, that everybody knows, and that may in the end be less relevant looking at it from a risk protection perspective?
Well, this is definitely a very important question. I would say that yes, we are definitely willing to provide all these solutions because they are needed, because it's our job. And not only it's our job, not only it's our business, but I would say it's also our social mission. Our mission is to allow citizens and businesses to pass on to us the risks they bear by their activities, so that they continue to prosper, to grow, to innovate, to live, to create, dream. And this is definitely the mission we have as an industry. So I think that we are not refusing to do it, not at all. Maybe some case we are not innovative enough. I think that definitely we need to accelerate innovation in the insurance industry. But I think that it's also obviously the best interest of all stakeholders that nobody is left behind. So it's the interest of all stakeholders to close as much as possible to the protection gap, and to do it as soon as possible. So I think that the insurance industry is ready for that, but the insurance industry cannot do it alone. We need to be supported by the state, by institutions, by regulators. We just cannot do it alone. So it's important once again to consider more and more public-private partnerships to address this kind of issue. So yes, I can confirm the availability of the whole insurance industry to address efficiently those issues. But once again, we need to cooperate very straightly with institutions and regulators to be able to achieve significant results very soon.
In terms of innovation, Philippe, can you give us an example from your experience at Generali where you would say that was an innovative product that has helped maybe to reduce in some way a protection gap? Can you give us an example of such a product?
Well, I'm not going to take an example at Generali, if you don't mind, but I will take an example in another insurance company, which is a Japanese insurance company, because I learned this yesterday, thanks to the Geneva Association meeting, and I was very impressed. I was very impressed because this Japanese insurance company, during the pandemic crisis, the COVID-19 crisis, built a very simple cover the COVID-19 cover, very simple policy. They decided to sell it completely online, so in a fully digital way, and they were very impressed by the result. The result is quite impressive because in less than 1 month they were able to sell 200,000 policies. This is a quick win for the customers, and this is very innovative. So I think if we want to accelerate innovation as an industry, we need to look at what our peers are doing, because there are many good ideas in many countries, and we need to create more synergies, looking at what the other is doing. I'm talking about cooperation. I was talking about cooperation between public and private sector. I'm also talking about cooperation between insurance companies to accelerate innovations. You know, we are not competitors on everything, and I think that to close as much as possible and as soon as possible significant protection gaps it's in the common interest of all insurance companies, and I think that we should more cooperate on this between us, and this is what I told my peers yesterday and today.
Well, that's very interesting, and I personally agree with you that we should learn from each other, because the challenges are there and they need to be addressed. One of the panels, the last panel this morning, also suggested that for people to buy insurance, maybe insurers should also change the way they talk to the people. Do you agree with that? That there could be some improvement in terms of the communication?
No, I fully agree on this. As I said, people will be willing to purchase more protection for us if they trust us, and they will trust us if we change the way we talk to them. So we must make sure that our customers have a clear and full understanding of the products they are buying. Unfortunately, most of the time, not only our products are very sophisticated and complicated, and I'm afraid that we cannot avoid this, but sometimes the way we write our contracts, our policies, is not clear enough, not transparent enough. So we need to improve the transparency, the simplicity, which means that we need to become more customer-centric, and I can tell you that this is one of the persistent ambition of all the strategic plans we have in Generali, to become more and more customer-centric. By the way, we name this becoming the lifetime partner to our customers. And the lifetime partner to our customers definitely means this trustful relationship between us and our customers. So this is absolutely critical. You're right.
Okay, thank you very much for confirming that. You talked about public authorities, and we are presently having in Europe this review of the Solvency II regime, and if we will hear it later from the rapporteur on the European Parliament, Markus Ferber, he's arguing that the insurance industry has not been able to offer guarantee products because the cost of regulation is too high, and therefore there is a need to reduce the cost of regulation so as to make money available that can be used for insurance activities. Would you share that view? And if so, would you also share the view of other people then who would argue that in that case it's not certain that the money saved will not be distributed to the shareholders, but will go to the policyholders?
Well, this is definitely an important discussion. First of all, I think that Solvency II is overall a good success, because it's important in Europe to have a common regulation and a common measurement of the solvency of the company. It has been working quite well, especially during the pandemic crisis, the COVID-19 crisis. I think it's a good way to protect the solvency of companies, and this is definitely in the best interest of policyholders. We believe, as the industry, we believe in Europe, at the European industry, we believe in the Solvency II regulation. Sometimes, by the way, we believe in it maybe more than some regulators, because it was very difficult for me to understand why during the pandemic crisis, despite very high solvency ratio, we were not able to pay dividends to our shareholders in some countries, because if you trust the solvency ratio, there were no issue. So overall, I think this system is working. I also fully support the need for a review of Solvency II, because I fully agree that in some case the capital requirements are too many, or they are too much, especially on the investment side. And I think that we can do better. I think that the review of Solvency II needs to be an opportunity to reduce some excessive capital requirements, consistently with the needs to invest more money in the recovery in Europe, on green infrastructure, on green assets, green real estate, green private equity. I think that the excess of capital requirement is coming mostly on the investment side, on some asset class, and I think that we need to improve this. We need to provide some relief on the cost of capital, on the green asset class that are consistent with the need of investing in the real economy, in the sustainable real economy, to boost the economic recovery. And definitely, if we are able to free up capital thanks to this Solvency II review, definitely we should provide additional capacity. So it would not be to pay more dividend how do you call that, shareholders.
Yes.
It would be to provide additional capacity to policyholders on some business line that's really important, such as business interruption for SMEs. Yes, we need to reduce Solvency II, we need to decrease some capital requirement, but the free capital has to be reallocated to insurance.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We talked also about sustainability, and I know that Generali recently announced a partnership with the United Nations Development Programme, focusing on designing innovative insurance-related solutions that accelerate the delivery of the UN Sustainability Development Goals. Can you tell us something more about that and your role there as Generali in that exercise?
Yes, of course. Well, we are really proud of this multi-year partnership, which is, by the way, the first one ever signed by UNDP with a player in the financial and insurance industry. And we look forward to putting together our insurance expertise together with UNDP's long-term focus on financing and development. We have committed significant technical and financial resources to UNDP's insurance and risk finance facility because the objective is definitely to increase the well-being of some of the world's most vulnerable people, especially in developing countries. If you look at what happens in the world's poorest countries, it's really it's really scary because in those countries, every year they lose $29 billion from disasters, and only 3% of these losses are covered by insurance. So we definitely want to extend the insurance solution to vulnerable families, to vulnerable small businesses. And I think that probably UNDP is the best possible organization that can guarantee us this amount of knowledge, experience, professionalism, and contact that is really needed. So this partnership will address some of the protection gaps we see in emerging economies. And more broadly, I believe that this partnership sums up very well our broader approach to sustainability, which to us means contributing towards the creation of a healthy, resilient, and sustainable society where all people can grow and be safe and happy.
Well, that sounds very, very exciting. Maybe let's move on to another area that is related to the protection gap and the role of prevention. Obviously, if we can prevent risks from materializing, that would be a long way in the right direction. In terms of prevention, are there any ideas that you can suggest where we can improve the present situation? Is there a silver bullet that we can use in that area?
Well, I don't know if it's a silver bullet, but it's definitely really important. So financial education about risk and about risk prevention is fundamental. And we, as the industry, should continue to proactively promote and encourage it as much as possible. We, on one hand, as insurance companies, we must raise awareness on the benefits of being insured. And this is not only in developing countries, but also in our home markets. I can give you the example of Italy, where only 50% of the house are insured, and only 5% of the insured house have a protection against earthquakes and floods. So knowing that the house is for many households a significant part of the assets, it's a bit scary. So the protection gaps are not only in developing countries, but that they are also in very developed and mature countries. And on the other hand, we also need to make sure our customers, as I said, both existing and potential, have a full understanding of the protection they need and the protection they are acquiring. So it's really important also to provide them the consultancy capability of a truly professional sales force. I think that selling insurance is not anymore about selling products to people, but it's providing people a 360 advice on the protection needs and on the protection gaps of individuals, professionals, families, and businesses. So this is what we need to do, and it's not only about our products, it's also about the quality of our distribution.
Thank you very much. This time is moving on, Philippe. Let me move on to my last question, which is about the world in which we live today. If we would have had this conference last year, we wouldn't have had the war in the Ukraine. I don't know next year when we have a conference what other risks will have popped up around the horizon. And therefore my question to you as a leader of the insurance industry, are you optimistic about the future? And do you honestly believe that the insurance industry can provide a real contribution to making this world a better place for all of us?
Well, I am both pessimistic and optimistic, which means that I'm realistic.
Realistic,
Why
yes.
am I saying this? First of all, definitely after the pandemic, in the middle of war, which is very close to Europe, to our home, we could be very pessimistic. I think we should rather feel the sense of urgency instead of being pessimistic. And this is being realistic. I think that we just cannot continue as we are doing. Basically, we are not taking a good care of our planet. We are not taking a good care of people, of the nature, of the animals, and the fact that we are using the planet instead of taking a good care of it creates a lot of risk. For example, the climate change. So, and there is a change, a sense of urgency. We need to stop using our planet, and we need to start now taking care of our planet. And this is what we have to do right now to decrease the risk, to slow down the climate change, for example, which leads to more natural catastrophes. So when we talk about the protection gap, on one hand, we need to decrease the need for protection, which means that we need to decrease the risk. And on the other hand, we need to allow more people to be able to purchase and to access to more protection. But I think this is the urgency. Stop using the planet and starting taking care of the planet. It will be very important to reduce the risk. And I'm optimistic because I think that our industry, our insurance industry, which is at the crossroads of all the great issues, the great challenges we are facing, our industry can be very powerful in providing solutions to close the protection gap, to decrease the risk, to support more people, to advise more people, to protect more people, and at the end, to make our world sustainable. I'm saying sustainable, not more sustainable, because I think that as of today, it's not sustainable. But I'm very convinced. I spent 40 years in the insurance industry, and the more I spend time in this great industry, because I'm very proud of being part of this industry, I'm really convinced that this industry has a great power, much more than we think, in order to provide solutions, any kind of solutions to make our world a better world and to make our world sustainable.
Thank you very much, Philippe, for this message as a realist, but also I can see as an optimist. Thank you for joining us from Venice, and I hope that you have a very good further meeting of the Geneva Association. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you to you. Thank you.